when wild camping, the type of shelter you use is very important. And there's three basic sorts: tarps, tarp tents and tents. Now, the difference between these can be confusing, but basically a tarp is a single sheet of material that can be pitched in all sorts of different ways, and it's small and lightweight. A tarp tent is usually a single piece of material, but it's shaped and can only be pitched in one way. So it's halfway between a tarp and a tent, as the name suggests. And a tent, of course, is the complete unit, sewn in ground sheet, poles, that can only be pitched in one position. Now, what are the differences in terms of weight and size? Well, they're considerable. One advantage of a tarp is it's very small, it's very light. A tarp tent is a bit bigger and a bit heavier, but still fairly compact, because one thing is both of these can be pitched with trekking poles or sticks. There are no tent poles. A tent, even a lightweight tent, see here, is much bigger and a bit heavier, but of course provides more shelter and maybe a bit more protection. Let's go back to the tarp. You can pitch this, as I say, in any way you like at all sorts of different positions, and if you're in a forest, and most tarps are designed for forest camping, you can use trees, fallen logs for pitching it. In the mountains it's a bit more difficult, it's more likely to be windy and exposed. Then you need maybe an extra number of pegging points, you might need to attach extra guy lines, and of course you need trekking poles. You're not going to find any trees or sticks. The advantage of a tarp as well is you get good views, you can see out from it, you're not enclosed in something, you feel more in contact with where you are, but that also means that where you are is more in contact with you. Tarps can be breezy, and unless pitched carefully, rain can get in. A lot of tarp campers also use a bivy bag over their sleeping bag, which gives you protection from the wind in particular and from any stray bits of rain that may get inside. Now, the tarp tent is a bit more shaped, as I say. So with a tarp tent you get a bit more protection from rain and wind. Some people still like to use a bivy bag. I don't think they're really necessary. And with a tent you've got the full protection. So it's really a question of which is more important: weight, space and comfort, protection from the weather, as to which you choose. This is a typical tarp, a rectangle of nylon with various pegging points. Pitched as a low profile like this, it is reasonably storm resistant, but you can see you've still got good ventilation underneath. In storms I like to keep the entrance fairly low and small, which minimises the chance of rain getting in. As you can see, it's reasonably stable end to end. Now, like virtually all tarps, there are no guying points along the side, which is a shame, because one thing that would make this much more stable is if you had two pegging points there and there. So you could pull it out like this. This would give you more room and would stop side winds pushing it in. But even so, once you know how to pitch it, you can make a tarp reasonably storm resistant. You certainly keep the rain out. You will get a bit of wind coming in underneath. Now, a tarp tent, as I say, is shaped. I mean, it's really basically a fly sheet without the inner tent. And it's a bit heavier than the tarp, but still quite light. Now, this one, you see, comes with good pegging points around the edge. You can get it right down to the ground, which reduces ventilation but keeps the wind and the rain out. By raising the trekking poles that are holding it up, you could have it above the ground for ventilation if the weather's good. You've got a zip door and it's shaped. You can't really pitch this in any other shape at all. Like the tarp, it unfortunately lacks side pegging points, so the sides could blow in. But some tarp tents do have those. You could also attach a guy line to here. It doesn't come with the tent, but you could attach one, peg it out for a bit more stability. and you've got a reasonable amount of room. I mean, this will sleep 2 people with reasonable headroom. When you go onto an actual tent, you can see immediately this has a curved pole, no trekking poles here. It has a good guying system. It's very easy to pitch because there's one shape only. Once you've pitched it, you know how to do it quickly in the future. Because it's a complete tent, it has a large porch and an inner tent, so it's double skin. So the inner tent, when you close the door, you're completely enclosed. Any condensation on the inside of the fly sheet drips onto the inner tent, not onto you. All wind is cut out, you don't need to use a bivvy bag. So this is very comfortable, you could almost say luxurious, but of course it weighs considerably more than the tarp tent, and even more than that than the tarp. So it's really a question of what's most important. Now this tent has been my favourite for many years. I've used it so often I can probably put it up in my sleep. And I like it because I know it will give me protection against whatever the wind and rain throws at me, and that at the end of a long tiring day I can have it up in a matter of minutes and be inside under cover. So for most trips, particularly in Britain, I'm prepared to carry the weight of a tent, which is not to say that I wouldn't use these. The tarp I would certainly use in places that are basically dry and fairly warm and not very windy. The Pyrenees, the High Sierra in California, and short trips in Britain where the forecast is good and the midges aren't biting, because of course tarps are not midge proof, you need separate midge netting. The tarp tent comes in between the two, and I'd be inclined to use it with a full netting inner. In that case it's really a tent, in which case you might as well have this, because then you lose the weight advantage. So for me the choice is between a full tent or a tarp.